Hunter Biden's plea deal rejected. This is major news. Plea deals don't generally get rejected. We have an adversarial system. If the defense and the prosecution agree to a deal, we kind of presume that that's good because the prosecutors are supposed to be working very hard to get the max, and the defense is supposed to be working very hard to get the minimum. And so if they come to an arrangement, we typically think, well, that's justice, baby. That is one side versus the others. Evidence has been presented. It's the adversarial system at work. We can come to a just outcome. But that is, of course, presuming that the prosecutors actually want a prosecution. If they don't want a prosecution, if they're actually colluding with the defense to get a sweetheart plea deal, and then it goes in front of the judge may not want to enter that puppy in very rare circumstances like today. In most situations, they just rubber stamp this stuff. There's an agreement, cram it through, but not this judge. We're going to learn more about Judge Mary Ellen Noreika out of Delaware, get some reaction from the media, and we're going to break down exactly what happened in court today because nobody was expecting this. It was supposed to just go through. This is a bad day for Hunter and the Biden crime family. They've wanted this to go away. And if the whistleblowers had not meddled around, this all could have been put to bed. This is Hunter Biden showing up in a motorcade to the court proceeding. And when we hear from the White House, they always tell us, he's just a simple private citizen. He's just this guy who just happens to stop by the White House every now and then. Leave Hunter Biden alone. But of course, kind of lives at the White House. Some people were speculating so that he could avoid service with his baby mama case and to avoid any questions from the various House committees, and probably because he has a ton of leverage over daddy when he is there at the White House. And so they pull up to the court. You can see the entire street is blocked off. He's got Secret Service protection, as most of those in the first family do. And so he'll get out and walk his way in, making it briskly inside the courtroom so that people aren't capturing too many photographs. And there he is, walking on in to Delaware. And this should have been all buttoned up. They should have had everything situated. Remember that this case is not really even an active criminal prosecution. I mean, we're basically done, or we're supposed to be done in this matter, because when you check out the court docket, which you can get the link to in our mind map, which you can access at robertgovea.com, you'll see that this was supposed to be buttoned up. They sent a letter in back in June, and this letter was just to notify the court that we've got a resolution. Most people, when they're charged with crimes, there are investigations that then lead to either the filing of a criminal complaint that oftentimes is under seal, then there's an arrest warrant that's issued, they arrest the subject, then they unseal the criminal complaint. Same thing with an indictment. We have a grand jury proceeding is convened, they do their due diligence, the government presents them a bunch of evidence, and they decide there's evidence of a crime here. They indict him, the indictment is sealed, they arrest the person, then they unseal the indictment. And we've seen all of that here. I mean, we've seen many people get arrested here, and we've gone through Donald Trump, for example, the various filings in his case. But that's not what happened here at all. In fact, right now, we've got an information that was filed, a misdemeanor information. It's saying we haven't really filed any actual charges, kind of filed charges yet, but we're going to wrap all of this up on the same day. We're going to arraign him and we're going to plea him out the same day. So we've spent a lot of time here talking about Donald Trump, his arraignments, huge deals, just for one proceeding, 5 minutes. You know what the charges are? Yeah. Do you have a lawyer? Yeah. All right. Now don't leave the country. Don't flee the country for most defendants. I don't think Trump got that request, but we'll see you back here. It's a very brief proceeding, but they were going to do that and the plea deal in one. Normally what you get are pretrial conferences, discovery, we have settlement conferences, we've got, interviews, we've got motions to suppress, motions to preclude, tons of litigation. Not in this case. All supposed to be done today. The big problem with this though is that this was not done today, which means all of that other stuff that you normally get is now going to go into effect. And so let's see who this judge is before we actually go through the proceedings, because this was a shocker. Mary Ellen Noreika. She earned her Bachelor of Science from Columbia, JD from Pittsburgh School of Law, began her career at a law firm, graduated in 1993, was a lawyer in more than 500 cases, patent law, biotech, consumer products, worked in private practice until she became a judge. Trump nominated Noreika to serve as the district judge of Delaware. The seat was vacated by Gregory Sleet, senior status. Nomination came out of vote. She had been considered as a potential nominee. She has been considered as a nominee for federal judgeship in the federal circuit by Joe Biden. Now, a couple notable cases. She presided over the case involving John Paul Mac Isaac. That was the laptop repair owner who got the Hunter Biden laptop. Noreika ruled against Mac Isaac. He sued CNN Politico for defamation, didn't find in his favor. She was also assigned to the criminal case against Hunter. And so let's take a look at the proceedings. The New York Times is walking us through this. In the court courtroom, they say Hunter Biden said that we are here to intend to plead guilty to the tax charges. And that's what they do. They bring everybody in. All rise. Please be seated. The judges, okay, sit down. All right. We're here on the record of United States of America versus Hunter Biden. I see appearances, please. Prosecutor says, Your Honor, we're prosecutors from the DOJ. And then Hunter's lawyers say, we're here. And they say, Mr. Biden is sitting here and present. Okay, well, we're here today to review a plea agreement on the tax charges in the case of Hunter Biden. The judge says, okay, Hunter, I want to go through a series of questions in this matter to make sure that you are doing this of your own accord. Do you knowingly and voluntarily enter into this plea deal, which included questions about Biden's drug use? Have you used any drugs in the last 24 hours that would impact your ability to proceed in this matter? No, I haven't, Your Honor. Do you understand this? Yes, I do, Your Honor. Are you making this agreement voluntarily? Yeah. Did you have an opportunity to speak with your lawyer about this? Yes. Well, let me ask you about drugs. He says, I first started inpatient treatment for alcohol in 2003, and ultimately I was seeking treatment at 6 inpatient facilities and a number of outpatient programs over 20 years. But he said those programs were primarily and originally for alcohol, but eventually I got treatment for drugs, and he didn't specify which substances he was addicted to. So the last time I was in a drug treatment program, fall 2018, but I continued to use drugs afterwards. The judge said, well, are you on drugs right now? Biden said no. When he was there, Biden was wearing a dark suit, sat with his hands in front of him, seated in between his lawyers. When addressing the judge, he spoke briefly, says, yes, Your Honor. The judge said, well, I'm going to ask you these questions because I want to make sure if you're entering this plea deal that you are doing it voluntarily and knowingly. Hunter says, yep, I'm not under the influence, Your Honor. She's like, are you sure? Noreika said, okay, well, it appears that you're competent and you're capable to proceed. And this is a nice little check that the judges do. They want to make sure that you're not being pressured or forced or under the influence because they don't want you to be able to come back and say, I didn't intend to do that. And so sometimes these can be very long proceedings where the judge, are you sure nobody did this? And just making sure. And it's all being recorded. It's all on the record. So if you say, yes, I'm going to go to prison and accept this guilty plea, or yes, I'm going to accept this misdemeanor conviction in Hunter's case and not really have any consequences, then you can't reverse that. You can't, be sitting in your prison cell and say, I never meant to plead guilty. My lawyer told me something. No, the judge is going to say, did your lawyer promise you anything that is not in this agreement? Did you read it? So he's competent. Now there's a sidebar. They're going through these questions. The judge calls up a sidebar and the husher goes on in the courtroom. Nobody can hear. Lawyers for the government, DOJ, and Hunter, they approach the bench. Hunter sitting alone at the defense table. After the sidebar, Christopher Clark, one of Biden's lawyers, spoke to Biden, came back and whispered to him, this is what we talked about, this is what's going on. The hearing continued. Now they start talking through this plea deal, and they tell us that, whoa, this thing is on the verge of collapsing here. The judge is going through these questions. She's saying, okay, term 5, paragraph 9, what is this one? She says, Mr. Prosecutor, I'm just confused about this term. Does this offer Mr. Biden blanket immunity from prosecution for his business dealings, or is it only for his tax offenses? What's the scope of this immunity? Great question, Judge. We've been asking that for a long time now, ever since we learned he was going to be taking a plea deal. Now, our perspective was that the DOJ had this unwritten agreement with Hunter and that they wanted this thing to just get squeaked on through. They had this information, they were going to go in there. There was an unspoken agreement. The DOJ, we can't put this in writing, but we're going to enter this plea deal here. We're, of course, not going to prosecute you, and it's going to close this case. After the whistleblowers blew the lid off the whole thing, they can't do that anymore. And so now the judge is saying, all right, is it an open investigation or not? Can you still prosecute him for business dealings or not? Judge says, Mr. Prosecutor Leo, I need to ask you point blank on this. I'm not liking these answers. A lot of wishy-washy conversation here. Does this deal mean that Hunter Biden would be immune from prosecution from other possible crimes, including violations related to representing foreign governments, FARA violations? Is he immunized from all of the other stuff? Prosecutor says, Your Honor, no, he's not. He doesn't have immunity. Biden's lawyer says, well, in that case, then this agreement that we're here for today is null and void. Now, this is just a giant show, okay? At this point, we're playing patty cake with each other between both sides. The fact that you have very competent DOJ lawyers and competent Biden lawyers, very expensive people, and they have this written plea agreement without a paragraph that clearly defines immunity, whatever the terms are, is like a joke. They're not idiots. There was an agreement, it just wasn't written in the document. And they were hoping that the judge could slide it through so that they could say that the case was closed, so that they would not have to have this ongoing investigation stuff. And they would avoid discovery, pretrial conferences, and actual prosecution. We are now going to get to see some actual prosecution, and we have the government on the record now saying that this plea deal, whatever this is not enough to give him immunity for all all of the other charges. Now, I personally do not think that this, I could be wrong, the judge may have asked this question if this case had not gotten as much publicity. I don't know. If Congress wasn't breathing down this jurisdiction's neck, if we didn't have IRS whistleblowers, if this was just the alternate reality, pre-IRS whistleblowers, this question may not have even come up, because now we're asking about the foreign governments. Now we're asking about the foreign crimes. So the whistleblowers may have saved this from happening directly. This question may not have ever happened, but for their testimony. So can we just say shout out to the whistleblowers? Now, Hunter's lawyers are on record saying our deal is only valid if we get full immunity. What kind of a psycho deal is that? And I personally think this may have been a mistake on their part. They might have been better served by just, okay, fine, we're going to plead guilty today. We know it's not in writing in there, but my daddy owns the DOJ, and he's not going to allow me to be prosecuted again. And if I am, he's going to pardon me anyway on his way out. And now all this does, because they've got this bravado, saying, fine, we're not going to enter a plea. Well, what are we're going to have discovery now? We're going to have a trial? We'd love to have a trial. That sounds great. We would love to have a trial on this and have discovery and have a full inquisition about these prosecutors and the type of prosecution they are bringing. Are they just phoning it in? Now we get to see all of that or not? Are they going to buckle? I still would imagine that Hunter Biden and his team are going to come back and try to find a deal. The last thing they want is more discovery on this. So they're flipped out now. In court, Chris Clark says, Your Honor, can we have a 10-minute recess? Let me go talk to the prosecutor, see if we can salvage this deal. Parties furiously negotiating in full view of 36 reporters packed into the courtroom. It's like madness. Documents flying all over the place. People are flipped. From the start, the judge seemed highly skeptical of the unusual deal. This offered Hunter broad immunity from prosecution in perpetuity. In perpetuity. Total immunity. She said to the prosecutors here, why has this been filed under a provision that gave me, the judge, no legal authority to reject this? So you've crafted the Department of Justice. No one's above the law, those people. They contort themselves into a plea deal that gives Hunter Biden broad immunity in perpetuity, and they say the judge can't even reject it. The judge says, the hell I can't. Watch me. She asked Leo Weiss, a prosecutor. She said, hey, you work for Merrick Garland, which is Hunter Biden's daddy. Is there any precedent for the kind of deal being proposed here today? He replied, no, Your Honor. Any precedent for giving this person a deal like this? No, Your Honor. Leo Weiss, U.S. attorney, honest and truthful for 3 words. Full sentence. Amazing. No, Your Honor. No precedent for this kind of a deal. There really isn't. DOJ should have never offered it. Of course, they did it because this is a sweetheart deal they were trying to cram through. The judge knows it. That's why it was rejected. That's how bad the deal is. If you have a question about it, just say, do judges often reject plea deals? No, but they did this time. Hunter's lawyers repeatedly cast the deal as the final chapter of the 5-year inquiry. I know. That's why we're all upset about it. But Judge Mary Ellen Noreika quickly punctured that assertion. She asked Leo, she said, is the Biden investigation ongoing? He said, yes. Said that if Biden's team thought otherwise, then there's no deal. Then there's no deal. What I think is this is a little bit of patty cake playing. Okay, I don't think these people are really at each other's throats at all. They were on the same side to create this unprecedented deal, to squeeze it through. They're working in cahoots with each other. IRS whistleblower blew it up. Now, these 2 kids got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. So now that they've been busted, they're playing this game. Oh, wait, what? Oh, wait, you're kidding. I thought it was blanket immunity. No, of course. And they go, so they're there in court because they know we're all watching now. This isn't like the DOJ is suddenly going to be a great prosecution. They're the ones who came up with the deal in the first place and offered it. They were going to try to shove it down our gullets had the whistleblowers not come forward and had this judge not ask that single question. So they're just going to fake like they hate each other. So now as we wait to see whether the deal is salvaged, it's important to remember that it was negotiated over weeks in which there were lengthy backs and forth about every inch of the deal. Of course, of course it was. The idea that this issue was not resolved seems extraordinary. Absolutely correct. There was a deal. There was an agreement. It just wasn't written in the document. And the judge was prompted to ask about it because of all of this madness. After the recess, Biden's lawyers and his government lawyers agree. They say the diversion agreement for the gun charge is separate from the tax charges, which, okay. And they say the issue of whether there is an ongoing investigation has dangled out since there is a plea deal that was announced. Christopher Clark, Hunter's lawyer, says, no, I thought the investigation was over. U.S. attorney said it was ongoing. So in my opinion, Clark should have just said it is over because for all intents and purposes, I would imagine it is over. The U.S. attorney, it's kind of like a game of poker. Are they actually going to charge him again? No. So maybe they should have just taken the deal. Judge Mary Ellen Noreika has delayed a decision about whether to accept the plea deal. deal, demanding that two sides make changes to the deal, clarifying my role as the judge, and insert language that limits the broad immunity from prosecution. They tried to squeak it through so that when Hunter, if anybody ever brought charges against Hunter in the future, they would have plausible deniability. Okay, they could just take this plea deal and they say they wanted the ambiguity built in. That's why they did it. So that when Hunter, if he ever got charged again, let's say Trump wins the White House, prosecutes him in 2025, they could say, sorry, our plea deal, even though it's ambiguous, it covers all of these other incidents. And I'm sure you get a DC judge, a Delaware judge, or a California judge to support that. But now they don't have that at all because the judge wants clarity. Biden's lawyers estimated it's going to take us about 2 weeks to get an answer on that. So after finally a 3-hour hearing, Hunter Biden entered a plea of not guilty on the tax charges, which he will reverse if they decide to redo their agreement to the judge's satisfaction. Now, we're going to see what the White House had to say about it, but Judge Mary Ellen said at times angrily that she felt like she was being asked to, quote, rubber stamp an agreement that she had serious concerns about. So shout out to Judge Mary Ellen Noreika from Delaware. Obviously, a troubling filing. Judge Mary Ellen Noreika not letting the Bidens pull a fast one on her today. And so Hunter Biden leaves court with an open criminal case, as he should. And so we've got reaction from this. Here is what the scene looked like from various news reports as it was unfolding. It was a wild afternoon.
Well, here we are, John. We now know that Judge Noreika is not going to accept the plea agreement. And as we were talking about just a moment ago, it's got to do. Judge Noreika does not believe that she has questions over the constitutionality of that diversion clause of the immunity that Hunter Biden would receive in this deal to not prosecute on the gun charge. She is not okay with that. So the headline here is she has not accepted the plea deal. That would likely indicate we could be headed for a trial. We have not heard from the prosecution or the defense. Maybe they'll be coming out and talking to us, but a major headline here. What we thought that was starting some 3 hours ago was going to be a routine plea deal. Hunter Biden in the early part of today's court hearing said he was prepared to plead guilty to the 2 misdemeanor tax evasion charges. Not going to happen. Judge Mary Ellen Noreika not accepting the plea deal, questioning the constitutionality of the diversion clause that kept him from being prosecuted for the felony gun charge. And she also noted to great extent, almost as if, John, we were sitting in a law classroom, the fact that she did not like the way it was structured and she had never seen one like this, and was really questioning how it was that the prosecution and the defense came to this agreement, challenging specific parts, portions, paragraphs of the agreement and the language therein. And that will certainly lead some to comment, particularly perhaps the House Republicans that have been saying from the beginning that this was a sweetheart deal. The judge saying that she was not okay with the diversion clause portion of this plea deal. That is why she is not accepting the plea today. And of course, it comes after we have seen in the last 24 hours quite dramatic developments, namely the House Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith issuing that amicus brief yesterday asking the court and the judge to take a look at the testimony we've seen in recent days.
And we don't know if that was consequential, if the judge took a look at that big fat amicus and saw some of the behavior of Hunter's lawyers in trying to get that removed off the docket. Pretty amazing that they got busted. CNN is even calling this a mistake, saying, how could this even possibly happen?
Someone made a bad mistake here. Am I wrong looking at this, saying that these someone, whether it be Hunter Biden's defense or prosecutors here,
how could there be such a big miscommunication?
I cannot even begin to explain how the Justice Department walks into that courtroom without knowing exactly what the scope of immunity or coverage is for Hunter Biden. And equally, I cannot even begin to understand how Hunter Biden's lawyers walk him into that courthouse without knowing exactly what the constraints, what the limitations of that deal are.
They knew. It was just not written in the document, and they got busted. These were two people who had a scheme and a plan to get this thing eked through the courts. They got busted, and now they're faking this shock. Wait a minute. Are you serious? It doesn't have immunity for us? Wait a minute. It's still ongoing? Oh, no. Because they all got busted. But we know what they were trying to do. Thankfully, the judge called them out. Now Hunter Biden's going to have some additional court dates on the docket. We'll see if there's discovery and more, and it's going to be a lot of fun to follow this one.